any extra precautions that people should use with people with IBD should use when they're going into the public washrooms?
Me?
Yep.
I mean, it's funny. I'm obviously not an infectious disease specialist, but I've been asked many, many times in interviews over the last couple of weeks about kind of what Lisa was talking about. Is are these these are very terrifying places right now? And I've kind of said to people, because I actually interviewed Lisa, and so I got the goods from Lisa about the respiratory nature and about the idea that you don't go in an enclosed space for too long, and you may distance to stop droplets from hitting you. Um, but every person who interviewed me, I said, you want to be washing your hands. You want to um, do your business, wash your hands well for long enough, and try to avoid touching any high touch surfaces on the way out. And everybody's like, okay, okay. And then I said, which is exactly what you would do any other time, no matter what. So no change here. So I think that it is probably the case that, people should practice good hand hygiene that they always have been practicing. I hope that people with IBD are able to access bathrooms as we start reopening, and I think Go Here will help with that, because any business that is a part of Go Here is probably more tuned into that need and more interested in that sort of community mindedness that is required to better support people in the community.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
Leslie, if I
Thanks.
could follow up, just the work you've done with advocacy and policy, I just a lot of our the IBD community are now going back to work, and they're not necessarily using public washrooms, but they're going to be using workspace shared washrooms. And the reality is that probably different companies might have different levels of practices and behaviors. And one of the common questions that we get is, how do you advocate for yourself in your work environment so that you have access within your work environment that they are going to be cleaned in a proper way, things like that. And what advice would you give to somebody who's going back to work that was a little bit nervous about their workspace bathrooms?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that it's very challenging. I don't have any trouble talking about toilets. I can talk toilets all day. But I know in the course of my research and just living as a human in Canada, we learn from a very young age that the only way we talk about toilets is if it's funny, it's potty humor, or oh, it's gross. And that's the kind of the way we grow up learning to talk about these things, which I think has two effects. One is that it causes people who have fundamental need that must be addressed, and who have to advocate for themselves. It causes this added level of sort of a layer. It's a barrier. It's a barrier for people self-advocating. I think the other side of that is, from a municipal perspective or any kind of government perspective, it makes it very hard to take it seriously. So I think it's actually, I mean, I think it is probably hard to be the one counselor at a council meeting anywhere in Canada who stands up and says, we really need to put in public bathrooms, and here are the reasons why. So I think it's actually really challenging to do that. But the thing is, when I started to write this book, I would say, oh, I'm writing a book. And people would say, oh, what's your book about? And I would say what my book was about. And everyone, well, there's only two responses. One is people laugh because they think I'm joking, or they kind of politely step away at a cocktail party. But inevitably, once I start talking about it, somebody says, oh, actually, and they have a story to tell, because everybody, no matter what their need is, no matter what their health situation is, everybody has had the experience of needing a bathroom and not having access. And so I think that maybe that is all, and I'm not taking away at all the difficulty of perhaps having these conversations. I think that's something that people can harness to help others recognize the need for bathrooms as they move back to work post-COVID to be cleaned, to be accessible, to be appropriately serviced.